Hi guys, I thought I would just make a short video about some of my reading plans for next year. So I have kind of vague and undefined reading goals generally, and I'll talk more about this kind of my broader goals in a kind of like 2019 reading goals video that's more general that will come out either at the end of this month or the very beginning of January. And I'm also planning to do like a 2018 wrap up and all of that. But I did have one specific goal that I wanted to kind of devote its own video to, especially because it's a goal relating to classics. So this is probably my only specific 2019 goal, and that is to finish reading the works of George Eliot. So George Eliot, you might have heard me talk about. She wrote Middlemarch. It's a pen name for a woman her name changed several times in her life, but generally her real name, people call her Marianne Evans. She's a Victorian writer from the late Victorian period. She was writing in the like 1850s to 1880s is kind of her span, I think. I loved Middlemarch so much. My favorite book of the year, for sure. My favorite book, one of my favorite books of all time, has made it to that rank. If you haven't read Middlemarch, go read Middlemarch and then come back and tell me that I was right. It's amazing. You should read it. Anyway, I decided I wanted to read all of Eliot's work, and this was a kind of manageable goal because she didn't write a ton of stuff, and I'm gonna just read her major novels. I think she has some short stories and some other like nonfiction pieces. She did some translations of some stuff, and I'm not gonna like worry about the deep cuts right now. I'm just gonna do the major works. So of her major works, there's one that I have already read, and that is Silas Marner. This is a shorter book. Actually, if you want to try Eliot's writing and you don't want to tackle the 800-page Middlemarch, try Silas Marner. It's got a similar kind of atmosphere. It's just like much smaller and more focused as a story. It starts out kind of bleak, but it does end hopefully, so stick with it if you're like, why are we reading this? I might actually reread Silas Marner just because it's been quite a while since I've read the whole thing, so we'll see about that. And then I should probably go get my computer so I can tell you what else she wrote. So Eliot only wrote 7 novels, which is why I'm making this a goal for next year. I still have a really busy second semester of this academic year, and I didn't want to tackle anything crazy. Someday I might like try to read everything that Dickens wrote, but I have a lot of novels left to read for Dickens, so we're not gonna do that. So I have already read Middlemarch and Silas Marner, but just in order, the works that Eliot has. Her first novel was Adam Bede, and I actually have started this already. Again, I'm trying to set myself up kind of for success. This one is not too long. It's about 500-ish pages, or 450 pages. And I am almost a quarter of the way through. And really enjoying it, although I don't actually know what the story is about yet. I don't really know what any of these are about. This was published in 1859, so I was right, she did start publishing in the 1850s. The next work is The Mill on the Floss, and I don't have this one yet. I'll put a cover there maybe. And that is from 1860, and this one I think is also quite long. Okay, so The Mill on the Floss isn't terribly long. The Penguin edition is 579 pages. I said it's not terribly long for a Victorian novel, guys. And that's with notes in the introduction and stuff, I think, is how they count that. So it's probably a little bit shorter than that. The next thing she published was Silas Marner in 1861, and like I said, I already have that, so I may or may not reread it. I'll just kind of see like how I'm doing when I actually get to The Mill on the Floss. I might not actually start after Adam Bede. I might not read anything of hers until the summer. So we'll see. I don't want to. We'll see. I don't know. Life is things. The next book that Eliot wrote was Romola, I think is how it's pronounced, and that was in 1863. And this one I'm really intrigued by. So all of her other works are set in England, usually in the past, except I think for Daniel Deronda, and usually in rural places except for Daniel Deronda, which is the last one. So she's kind of known for her like pastoral, kind of semi-historical settings. So Middlemarch, for example, is set in the 1830s, so is The Mill on the Floss. Adam Bede is set in like the very late 1700s. But Romola is set in Renaissance Florence. So I think that's really interesting. It's a little bit longer. It's 641 pages. Again, that's the Penguin edition. The next work is Felix Holt, The Radical, which is from 1866, and that one is 545 pages. It looks like Eliot was pretty consistent with her lengths, except for Middlemarch, which is... This is about a guy named Felix Holt, and he's a political radical. I don't really know what Eliot has to say about that, but that one should be quite interesting. This is a novel that she wrote before Middlemarch, and she didn't actually publish anything. After publishing like 5 books in 7 years or something, she didn't actually publish anything for like several years. So she took basically 5 years to work on Middlemarch, and I think from what I've read, people have treated Felix Holt kind of as like Eliot trying to figure out how she wanted to write and not quite succeeding, and then like kind of taking a step back and then writing Middlemarch, and that was kind of like her nailing what she wanted to do. So I'll be interested to kind of read Felix Holt after having read Middlemarch and see what she's kind of doing and if that's different from her earlier works. Her final book is Daniel Deronda, which she published in 1876, and this is set in a much more contemporary England in 1865, and I think this is the only novel that she published that was set in London, which is interesting because she lived in London most of her life, so she actually knew the city quite well. I am definitely looking forward to reading Daniel Deronda because it is her last novel, so it's the one that followed Middlemarch, and I'd love to see kind of where she went after Middlemarch, because Middlemarch is just so brilliant. Daniel Deronda is also longer like Middlemarch. It's 796 pages, so that one will take me a little bit to get through. So that's kind of one of my main goals for the next year. It's probably my only specific goal, is just to read through all of those works. So I think that ends up being, I really will only have 3 books to read, since I have Adam Bede and I have read Middlemarch and Silas Marner. So is that right? There should be 4. So that's 4 books, but they're 4 pretty chunky books, and so like I said, probably I don't know if after reading Adam Bede I will have time to start any of those until after the first semester ends, but I'll definitely kind of update and like make it clear from the title when I'm starting this project. I will for sure review these maybe like 2 at a time, since I'm reading 4. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let me know in the comments if you have read any of Eliot's books, and if there are any that you're particularly excited to see me read. I would love to hear from you guys, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!